A graveyard of steam. The forlorn and dismembered bodies of some of the great engines which made the British railway system a model for the rest of the world. Very easily, this could have been the fate of all the hundreds of locomotives pensioned off as steam gave way to electricity and diesel. But steam is alive and well, thanks to those who've made themselves the guardians of this most exciting and evocative of all modes of travel. The scene of this great little railway journey of the world is the Norfolk coast, and there's no shortage of people prepared to give their time working and travelling on a line like this, dirty, noisy and inefficient though it may well be. David Madden is the general manager of the North Norfolk Railway Company, which operates 3 miles of track between the seaside town of Sheringham and the little village of Weybourne.
It's a question that's never really been satisfactorily answered, even for myself, and I think it's nostalgia, obviously. It's to do with the fact that steam was part of history, and it's played a great part in the life of this country and how it's developed, and I think people have seen something of an adventure from it, because a fiery steam locomotive gives a sense of well, something's happening all the time, like a living machine, and preserving that is part of it.
But it's not just the old steam buffs remembering the great days who find fascination in the polished wood and elaborate Victorian ironwork of the era when coal was king. Arrive with even the humblest of steam locos, and a crowd of small boys and girls magically appear. Steam continues to extend its appeal to generations of children who very often have never travelled on a train at all, let alone one drawn by steam.
They seem to love the steam trains, and bearing in mind even the modern child today has been brought up on the Reverend Audrey books with Thomas the Tank Engine, for instance, and so they relate it to that. And they're seeing it in real life, what they've read in the books previously. Not even really the history of it, but Thomas the Tank and the adventures of steam locomotives. So they see it in a different light to what the parents see.
So, for many passengers, it's a journey through eternal childhood, where the puffing steam engine is a friendly, living being.
On your sheet. All I can see is just some bushes.
Reserved railways are increasingly popular with film and television companies, who seek to give their productions the air of authenticity that a whiff of steam can bring. Here's the North Norfolk's Weybourne station, masquerading as a country halt in wartime. Weybourne Station has been the setting of 5 films in the last 12 months, bringing in necessary revenue to the company, which needs £100,000 a year to keep going. Lisa Goddard is one of the stars in an ITV production of Seal Morning on location at Weybourne. It's a 30s story of a young girl who adopts an abandoned baby seal. For the photographer, the actress has to share the limelight with a 70-year-old 40-ton loco, which needs as careful handling as any star. David Cobham, the producer of the serial, has found that the temperamental traits of the train can give him even more problems.
I think working with animals and children and trains are probably the most complicated things you can work with, because you have to time things just right so that the engine stops at the right place so that the passengers can get out exactly in front of a camera. And that takes more time than working with actors who you can just tell to stop in a certain place.
But the railway manager, David Madden, is happy that the nostalgia boom is helping the railway's finances.
Filming's very important to us, and we've been very lucky indeed with this beautiful isolated station here, which has meant that we've been able to film all sorts of periods, ranging from about 1880 to the 1950s. And so we've been able to be host to BBC, ITV, and even big film production companies. The benefit, first of all, is naturally we get paid for the services that we provide, but it's very involved too. I mean, today the locomotive had to be lit up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And as we're largely run by volunteers, of course, we've got to be very persuasive to our own people. So there's a lot of involvement in getting the station ready, even though the technicians take over. We've got our own work to do to make it realistic.
It gives us immediately a 1930s atmosphere. The pistons, the steam, the old loco, that immediately conjures up the 1930s for me. And as Seal Morning is a 1930s story, that's very important.
The railway, which used to be part of the Midland and Great Northern route, played a major part in the development of the Norfolk coast as a holiday area in Victorian and Edwardian times. Because of the line, the fishing village of Sheringham became a popular resort in the heart of Poppyland, the romantic name coined for the area. Now, the town station lives on as a memory of those dead and perhaps more leisurely days. But the business of running a railway is not a peaceful affair. The staff are volunteer enthusiasts and spend a great deal of their free time on behind-the-scene chores, which are far from glamorous. Working on this ex-British Rail J15 engine in the early morning are a London journalist, a telephone engineer, and Mary Johnson, who in everyday life rarely gets her hands dirty as an insurance clerk.
First thing to do is get up quite early, about 4 hours before the train's due to leave. It takes 4 hours for it to sort of heat up and get enough pressure to move. Basically then to check in the firebox, check for any clinker, and check the smoke box, make sure there's no leaks in any of the tubes. And then, most important of all, make the tea. That's the best thing of all. Then basically what I'm doing now, cleaning, so it looks nice for people to take their photos of and generally look at, just what we're here to show them.
Normally in the summer we can get steam up in about 3 hours from starting off fresh kind of thing, and then we hopefully ready by the first train to say we get water, coal and all the rest of it. Clean the thing up as a rule before we start.
They see you coupling or uncoupling up and they sort of, "Here, Dad, that's a lady down there." And people sort of tend to look then. They don't notice, really. They're looking mainly at the engine, and you're just a secondary thing. It's just mainly technique, like swinging. I use my hip to swing with the coupling and things like that. It's just usually use whatever you've got available. You leverage.
10 a.m. and the railway is open for business, ready once more to cast its spell on its passengers for the first journey of a summer's day. With all the drama of steam, the ancient engine yet again weaves its magic of half-forgotten sights and above all, those sounds on the short 3 miles from Sheringham to Weybourne.
Blow on the whistle again now. Yeah. I get excited. The passengers like to hear.
In the guard's van, 12-year-old Mark Middleton prepares for another stint distributing information to the passengers. He spends as much free time as his mother will allow working on the railway, and wasn't even born when the last steam trains ran on a British rail line.
I hand out these leaflets up and down on the train, and I also look after a model railway. We came on holiday here before we moved here, and that's really how I got interested in it. You know, my mother said that we might be moving, and I was glad because I'd be near here. But my mother is mostly concerned about the hours that I work, so I don't get overtired, etc. Because the hour I go home sometimes and I'm shattered.
On a siding at Weybourne in a coach which once carried the directors of the London North Western Railway in all their splendour, sit the part-time board of the North Norfolk Railway. A retired marketing manager, a housewife, a retired lecturer, and a coach operator. In the chair, a London solicitor, David Morgan, who was in at the very beginning.
Well, what happened in our case was that there was a society of aficionados to the M&GN, which is the muddle and get nowhere, of course, to those who know, who wished to reopen part of the M&GN. And they wrote to British Rail in the early 60s, and eventually they were offered about 4 different stretches of line. This seemed to be the obvious location at Sheringham and Weybourne because it's near the sea, a seaside resort. It had only just been closed and therefore was in fairly good order.
But what's so special about the railway that can bring a busy lawyer all the way from London?
God knows, I think I got into it purely by mistake. I joined the society because it was about the longest name I'd ever heard of any railway society. It was totally a new thing then, and we were lucky because we got in on the ground floor. I think a lot of people come to railways now and they think, oh, they've got a functioning organisation, they've got all the people they want. Totally untrue, of course. We are looking continually for new volunteers. But I think it was the idea possibly of trying to do something that we thought we could do better than the professionals, which I have to say we certainly can't. But I think everyone has wanted to run the railways at one stage, anyone who travelled by them. If only I was running the railway, the trains would run on time.
It's tourists that we rely on. People coming to North Norfolk, they're on holiday, and they want to have a little bit of nostalgia. So that's where the bulk of our business comes from. We're also in the leisure industry, of course, because most of the people operating the railway are, in fact, volunteers. They are using their free time and their holidays to actually run the railway.
The people who play trains can't all be flamboyant guards or dashing drivers. Someone has to keep the ancient creaking machinery running. What looks like a scrapyard at Weybourne is in fact a collection of locomotives and rolling stock waiting to be painstakingly restored. In the meantime, there's always the boilers to be flushed out. To work with this ancient technology, you need to love it, and the railway's chief engineer, John Cossington, certainly does.
My pleasure, and it is a real pleasure, is in solving the engineering problems with the old machinery in the old-fashioned ways, exercising a skill, if you like. Every job is different, every job has its problems, and because we are still establishing a workshop, we have to make most of our own tools and fixtures. We're always short of equipment, and I suppose we always will be. In terms of machine tools, we are not badly off. Funnily enough, it is the small things that are so difficult to come by. Taps and reamers, well, I say difficult to come by, one can buy them, of course, but that's not quite the same thing. We've been very fortunate in that I have in the workshop 3 excellent manual service people. One of them is a skilled engineer, a really skilled engineer. He has been able to take over a lot of the restoration work from me, which has left me free to do the maintenance.
Part of the railway route runs over a busy road. The bridge carrying the track was found to be dangerous. It's now been replaced in the largest single operation ever carried out by a preserved railway in Britain, and all by volunteers. Happy holiday makers chuffing over the bridge don't realise that as soon as they've passed, the rails will be lifted and replaced before their return, using the sort of manpower rarely seen today on British rail.
On to the south. And again.
We're changing the shorter lengths on this side for 60-foot lengths and 45-foot lengths. That'll enable the trains to run more smoothly through this part. This particular rail is worn on the head of the rail, and we've got to replace it so there'll be much longer life left in the track.
No, every other one.
But even the best regulated railways have their problems. The J15 has inexplicably run off the rails at Sheringham Station. This could have been dangerous, and the railway staff have to prove they know their stuff as much as the professionals.
Which I'm taking with a diesel, and I want to get all the equipment, heavy equipment up here. And I've sent Fred to Weybourne.
John's on his way already.
Yeah, to get the other loco going. So we'll look after this and get it all sorted. Can you keep steam on, George?
You know you won't be able to pull your...
No, I'm not worried about that, because what I shall have to do is to pull her anyway and just get her back on the rails. Yeah. I'll worry about repairing the track afterwards.
I'm thinking about you signaling me back in again. You won't be able to...
No, well, I'll see to that. If you come to a halt at that signal, OK, and then I'll have that flagged as far as that goes. OK?
How long do you think before you can get this?
I wish I could give you an accurate answer to that, but we're really getting cracking on it. This is the main thing now, and all people are being mustered who can be mustered to help out. And the engineers are coming down from Weybourne. But we've clearly got to do a lot of jacking and packing and then slew it back onto the track. The first objective is to get it back on the line. We've got to find out why it happened so that there will be no repetition in future. All this takes a bit of time. But right now, action stations.
In just 4 hours, under David Madden's direction, these dedicated amateurs have the 40-ton loco back on the rails. At a time of crisis, an encouraging word from the chairman can always help.
How soon do you think you'll get this ready? Because you know we've had a failure of the other loco.
Yeah, should be ready for the 285.
Oh, good. You can get her down to Sheringham by then, can you?
Yes.
Oh, that's splendid.
Beyond Weybourne, the abandoned track sleeps in the summer sun. But the railway company are wrenching the route back from the briars and the bracken and plan to reopen the line as far as the market town of Holt, now just a quarter of a mile away.
It's a very long job. First of all, the pioneering job of clearing all the bushes and weeds that have grown over those years, and then acquiring the track materials, the sleepers, rails and chairs, and in a very painstaking way, laying them almost one by one for the whole of the 2¼ mile section.
1, 2, 3.
At the moment, Weybourne is a very small village, and even so, Weybourne was built nearly 1.5 miles from the village itself, in the middle of nowhere. So the market town of Holt is really our goal, and we'll be able to operate our trains between Sheringham and Holt a distance of 5 miles, and Holt is now a 1/4 mile, a tantalising 1/4 mile away that we're heading for. I'd like the whole railway to be operational by 1987 because there's some significance in that. The first railway to come from Holt to Sheringham and Cromer was exactly 100 years from 1887. We're not in the transport business. We do carry passengers simply for traffic, but on the whole, it's really the tourists who are travelling round along the line to see some scenery, to experience being hauled by a steam engine. I wouldn't call it a monument, but it's certainly preserving part of history. So it's really a living museum of what history was all about as far as transport is concerned in terms of steam railways.
But to those who ride the footplate, it's not history beneath their boots, but a living thing that's a challenge to control, with a strange fiery attraction all its own. The wonder of steam.